The gentleman I'm going to introduce probably needs very little introduction to many of you that are involved at Marion Methodist. Chuck Alexander is the chair of our building committee, the second chair of our building committee. He took over for Jerry Van Dyke some time ago and is going to lead us through this presentation. So please welcome your chair, Chuck Alexander.
That's a pretty good deal when you get applause before you even say anything. As all of you know, the mission of our church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Our facilities are one of the tools that we use to do that. In order to be able to do a better job of carrying out our mission in Marion, our congregation decided that we needed to build a new facility which would allow easier access to the facilities for members of our congregation, provide us room to grow, and provide a space to enhance our current ministries and embark on new ones. We've been involved in that process now for a little over 10 years. Our original master plan was to build a facility that included a large narthex area and 5 wings coming off of that large narthex. It looked kind of like a hand a little bit. If you attended any of the meetings that we had earlier in the year, in the January-February timeframe, we shared with you the fact that we had decided to move to a different layout than those 5 wings. And so this evening we're going to show you what that layout looks like and what it consists of. Excuse me. But the design that we've landed on, the layout that we have now, we feel will help us meet our immediate needs as well as allow us to expand in the future as need be. It also provides us a lot more usable space than we have today, and it will give us a layout where we can have education, fellowship, and worship occurring simultaneously. And we also decided that needed to be the facility that could be paid off without having to have capital campaigns from now into perpetuity. You go ahead and applaud. So that brings us to this evening. Our committee is excited to share with the congregation a plan that we feel will provide us the space we need today, provide us a means to expand in the future as the needs of our congregation and ministries warrant, and do so with a budget that we feel is appropriate for our congregation to support. As you might imagine, the journey to get to this point this evening has involved a lot of discussion and work on part of the building committee, and to that end, I would like to thank all the members that have served on the committee in the past, and I'd also like to introduce to you the current members of the building committee. If those members would stand or step in, if you would, as you're being introduced. Gene Gerber, Matt Wildman, Linda Payton, Brad Shuver, Tom Padley, Dan Cudworth, Dennis Gomate, Val Lawrence, Dr. Connie Miller, Sean Poston, and Brenda Hollinger. And Pastor Mike and John Terry also serve as ex officio members. So this evening, our plan, like we said, is to thank you. Our plan this evening is to unveil, if you will, the layout that we've landed on. And for all of you that are sitting in the back row where I usually sit, if you can't see these drawings, don't fear. You'll have copies of these in an upcoming issue of the Marion Methodist. So if you don't get a chance to come down and look at them this evening, you'll be able to see those when that comes out. So this evening we have the pleasure to have with us some representatives from our architect and our builder that we're working with on our new facility. We've got Bob Stokes from Renter Connect, who's our builder. Gordon Parker was supposed to be here, but he got a better offer. He's fishing in Canada, so had I got that offer, I might have went with him. And then also we have Dale Solom and Alfredo Lujan from Solom Lang Architects. Now, Mike mentioned... Yeah. And I will tell you, I think once you see the plans, I think you'll be as excited as we are. I mentioned earlier that we'd had a master plan, and we decided that it really wasn't the right master plan, and we asked them to redo it for us. And I think the building committee feels like they have done an awesome job of coming back with a plan that fits what we ask them to do. They put a plan together that serves us with the square footage that we felt we needed to do the ministries that we do, and for a budget that we felt like we could afford. And we feel like they've really worked well with us to do that. So we're excited to share that with you tonight. A couple of things, or one other thing to mention again, Mike mentioned the fact that when you came in, you should have received a question card. As we go through the presentation, or as Dale and Bob go through the presentations, if you have questions, we'd ask that you write them on that card, and then the building committee members will be coming up and down the aisles to collect those. So if you have questions, just feel free. I'd suggest maybe that you try to hold off if you can towards the end of the presentation, because that way some of the questions that you have initially may very well get answered during the process of the presentation. And so if they don't get answered, we'll take those at the end. And what we'll do is we will answer all those questions. We'll try to address some of them this evening. What we're going to attempt to do real quickly is scan through those. And if we see questions that have been repeated or asked by several different members, we'll try to address some of those this evening. And then we'll also provide answers to the rest of the questions in upcoming issues of the Marion Methodist on the website and by other means. So with no further ado, I'm going to step down and I'm going to turn it over to Dale Solomon.
Thank you very much. Beautiful introduction, Chuck. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go through this as best I can. Keep in mind that some of these slides might be difficult for you to see, but a couple of the drawings are available for you down here. So please step in and take a look at the plan and the overall view. And I believe that will also be, I think Chuck mentioned, it'll be mailed out to you later as well. So keep that in mind as we move forward. My story about how this got changed around is a little different than Chuck's. We were approached with, we got to get this thing going. We got to make this happen for our church. We're growing. We've got to make use of that land. We want to provide a new home. And but we only have so much money to spend, and we want it all. And we want it to be durable. We want to be expandable. We want to make it visible. We want all these things. And I said sure to everything but the budget. That's what Bob's going to said sure. Yeah, he said sure as well. So I think we're in good shape. And when I say have it all, we wanted to make. I think your building committee said, let's make sure we don't lose what we have here. With that, I'm going to jump in on the first slide, which is the build campaign. And we were presented with the campaign you're in now and where you're at and where you're going to go. And I think the next slide that we're showing right now is very important, is that we're working together. We don't work in a vacuum. Rinderneck and Solom Lang and Hall partnered with the building committee to come up with what you see. We didn't work some magic in the back room and come forward with this information. It was gathered with everybody participating as best they could in a fairly tight but adequate time frame. So keep that in mind. Next slide. And this is one I can't see from that far away. So site analysis. I'm going to bring this up because I think it's very important that, though this will be a review for some of you that saw the first presentation, I want you to know that your site is gracious and wonderful. We have a lot of opportunities there, not just for this project that we're going to talk about tonight, but future opportunities. And one of the things we want to make sure is not paint ourselves in a corner so that you had an opportunity to grow, expand, and use the site for multiple purposes. It's about 29 acres, located in the northeast section of the city, as you probably know, out on Highway 13, bounded to the north by 35th Avenue or Street, and bounded by REC Drive to the south. You know that's where Marion's growing. It has high visibility. It's got all the things that make it a prime site for many purposes, but in particular this church. Going a little bit further to the next slide, site analysis, existing conditions that we looked at. You have a major arterial and secondary roadways that, though they're not fully functioning yet, 35th and REC Drive, those will become major connectors to the east and west, to the west in Marion, and connected north and south with Highway 13. This is very important because not do you want to only be visible, but you want to be accessible. So as these roadways continue to the west into Marion, it becomes a prime way to get into the site and to the facility. Adjacent, the site as it's used right now is agricultural. You're bounded by agricultural sites primarily to the east and west and to the north, a commercial site to the south. We see those developing, having multiple opportunities for development. Not sure exactly what they'll be, but for the foreseeable near term, they'll be agricultural. Environmental factors. Let's go to, what slide are we on? Okay, there we go. Pardon me, I'm trying to do two things at once here. There we go. This shows the sun path. Basically, everything you're seeing, north is to the top, west is to the left, and east is to the right, and south to the bottom. And the site basically has very good sun exposure, as you can imagine, typically during the summer and to some extent the winter months. But basically, the sun follows that arc that you see in orange. Our winter winds typically come from the north and west, and we get some summer winds from the south and east, or south and west. All right. One thing that we should be aware of, the site generally slopes to the south and to the east, and so are the waterways that naturally drain the site. This is very important in how we site the building and for future development. All sites have to drain. All sites have some slope. It's actually better to have a little slope in a site than none at all. In your case, it's excellent. It provides good drainage. All the utilities, water, sanitary, sewer, natural gas, cable, telephone, electrical lines currently exist to the north, south, and east. So, again, all those major utilities are right there ready for us to use. Let's go to the building program. Again, a difficult one to see unless you're up close, and nobody in a church sits up close, so it's your fault, not mine. Building program, as I mentioned, the building committee members came to us and said, we want it all. What does that mean? A church that functions in three primary areas. They get broken down even further, but three primary areas, and that is in worship, gathering, and education. And you can call it whatever you want, but it's kind of those three major areas. And the building committee wanted a balance between worship, gathering, or fellowship, or narthex space, and education, children's space. Those things had to balance against each other. Enough program area to make it work. What we came up with is a narthex of a little over 7,000 square feet. And the narthex would serve as that gathering space, a place for people to meet, to greet each other, to have a meal, to have an event, to gather before and after services, to gather before and after education. The sanctuary chancel area, 10,394 square feet. The goal was to seat 1,000 people, and that's what we have. We have an opportunity here and the space to seat 1,000, maybe a little more, but at least 1,000 people. AV. I was told do not put AV up in the loft, and so we have AV booth and production area for audiovisual down on the floor, so IT and those kinds of things are handled right where people get, so they're hearing and seeing the same things that people in the sanctuary are hearing and seeing. Coat storage. We thought we should provide some of that, 181 square feet. Storage, general storage, 995 square feet. Restrooms, 850 square feet. A commercial type kitchen, around 750 square feet. A check-in space for daycare, childcare. Office of 265 square feet. Administrative office for 122, a nursery and toddler room of 1,152 square feet, additional classrooms of 5,170 square feet, janitorial and mechanical round it all out, and we come to 27,746 square feet of usable space. This does not include walls, corridors, any of that kind of stuff. These are actual figures of the space that would be inhabited or used by people. The total gross square feet, the actual amount of building that's being considered for construction, is 32,000 square feet. So it's a sizable structure. Just to give you an idea, that's about 3/4 of an acre. 43,000 square feet in an acre, so it's a good sized building. Going back to our next slide, to site analysis. The location was primary importance of the facility, and I mentioned that because we wanted to make sure the building was visible, but also had to work with the site as it exists and what the site will be in the future. Again, I mentioned there will be 35th will be extended and working all the way into the city of Marion. Same thing with REC Drive. At this point in time, we're planning to drive off of REC Drive towards the bottom of that image you're looking at, coming into a parking area that will be to the west of the building and a parking area to the east of the building. The first parking you see is the parking to the east, and that parking has a drive-up facility to an entry. So there's dual points of entry on this facility. The building is the dark image in the middle between the two parking areas. And the idea behind this is to bring people as close as we can to the front door, in this case front doors. And that was one of the major concerns in your last efforts, and still again in this particular version of the facility, to get people to that front door and get them in the building, whether you be children or someone elderly or someone just needing help. We wanted to make that happen. So we have parking again to the east and the west. And the parking winds up being in the neighborhood of 250, 60 parking stalls, depending on how things work out. And we take advantage in this location of the highest ground on the site. We have increased opportunities for natural light. Because we're removed back from the Highway 13 and somewhat from 35th and even further from REC, we have less road noise. That was a concern. We wanted to be visible, but we didn't want to be on the highway. Ease of future growth. We can expand this building to the north very easily. You can see the green area to the north and the green area to the south. There's plenty of room for playing fields and other facilities. We're just using a small portion of the site in the northeast corner that we can expand in many directions and develop in many directions. Parking, we wanted to make sure that parking was highly visible from the road. So the parking that's to the east of the building, the one that has the drop-off drive-up, also has the spire that you'll see later. That's going to be highly visible from Highway 13 and to a lesser extent, but still very highly visible from from 35th Avenue and from REC Drive. Again, I talked about it before, but close-in parking, again, to make it easy to get to the facility. I understand you have plenty of parking here now, but this will even be better. And prominent entries and protected entries so that you can get into the building fairly quickly and protected and out of the weather. Next slide. Briefly again on I'm going to touch on site again because I think it's so important. Wayfinding, we put a crossfire out here between the east parking and the building that kind of goes at this angle, this kind of a slight angle to the site. We want to make sure that's highly visible from 13, 35th, and REC. We want people to know this is a church. We want people to know where the front door is. The South Drive provides access to an east and west drop-off. We talked about that before. Vehicular traffic, South Drive connection with REC Drive. This will be our first connection in this phase. In the future, as 35th is developed by Marion, we'll have a connection to 35th, but not to start with. Your first connection with the drive will be down to REC Drive to the south. Parking, as I mentioned, to the east, 138 cars, to the west, 126 cars, and all the walkways, all the parking, everything that leads you to and from the building is fully accessible. And with that, Maestro, I'm going to talk about this. This is the image, a different view of the image that you're seeing on the boards. We're kind of coming in from the southeast and now wrapping up on the north end of the building. These are trees after about 20 years, by the way. I'm just going to kind of let this go through once so you kind of get a feel for the topography and how the church building, and remember it's a building, not a church, sits on the site. For some reason, this video is real choppy. I don't know why, but okay, we're going to start over again. This time I'm going to occasionally ask Simon to stop. And I would stop right here, please, Simon. The grayed out area in the lower left-hand corner, that portion of the site you do not own. That's a commercial. There's storage garages there. Everything that you see in green bounded by the drives is the church's property. We're looking at from the southeast down on the church. If it were an aerial view, you would never see this unless you're up in an airplane, but it's important to show this so you get an idea how everything fits on the property. And you're seeing the easterly parking here, and the drive off to the left goes to REC Drive, and the other drive parallels the church in a kind of a northwesterly direction and goes to that other parking lot. And again, the reason for these two parking areas is to get people close in. When you're talking about 500 plus people or parking spaces, that gets to be a tremendous size lot. So it breaks down the physical size and gets people closer to where they want to go. All right, move forward. Now we're closing in on the entry portion, and notice there's a walkway going out into that parking. We're now swinging around towards the north side of the building, and let's stop right there. This is showing the sanctuary. The sanctuary is kind of a single pitch sloping roof, and there's windows that we're working with here on the north side to bring in ambient light, not this kind of harsh light that you get here from the west, but more of a softer light. We'll have some sun control on that as well, but we think this is a wonderful way to naturally light the sanctuary and create a nice dynamic inside that sanctuary space. Okay, keep going, please. We're continuing around the north side. Now we're going to the entry on the west side. Let's stop right there. This entry is very similar to the entry on the east side. You can kind of see it in the background. We have approximately the same number of cars, or close to the same number of cars. We have a center walkway that leads to the parking, fully accessible, easy to recognize. Get out of your car, know where you need to go, and get yourself inside the building. All right, Simon? Now we're working our way over to the south side of the building. Let's stop right there. You're seeing smaller punched openings. They're actually quite large windows, but those represent windows into the education wing. You're seeing the end of the education wing right here. So those smaller windows represent daylighting into the classrooms. And I think there's only 2 classrooms that were unable to get daylighting in. That was also a goal of the building committee, is to try to develop a daylighted classroom experience for everyone that is in the education area. Okay, the drive that you see off to the right is again that drive to, or the drive that connects with REC Drive. So go forward again, Simon, please. Now we're going to come in close to the entry on the easterly side. There's that walkway between the parking. You're going to go into the drop-off drive. And let's hold it there, please. And as you can see, cars can come up very tight to that entryway to get people into the building. You can kind of get a glimpse of the cross spire. Looks like it's coming out of the top of that one car. It isn't. And again, the idea is to have multiple opportunities to get into the building. In this case, multiple opportunities for people to park, let people out, and get into that main entry. Now, this main entry faces generally east, somewhat to the south, and we think that's perfect for environmental reasons. Obviously, you get some early sun in that space, helps melt snow, makes it a pleasant, sunny space. Not so much for our other entry on the north side, but in inclement weather, we would expect people to typically use this entry, though the other one certainly can be used as well. Okay, Simon. Looking at the entry again, and then working our way back out. And I do apologize once again for the choppiness here. And you can see the crossfire. And that'll be highly visible from 13th. And then I'm not going to talk for a while. I'm just going to let this loop one more time, and then we'll move forward. I don't know who's going to mow all the lawn, though. That's just... I said I wasn't going to talk, but it's not often we get such a beautiful site to work with. I know it just looks like a farm field to you folks now, but we see the potential. And I think there's just lots of opportunity. And I just wanted to also point out, everything we're showing you today is part of this project. It's not anything that we're planning down the future. Everything you see is actually in the project. We have other things that we're considering for future phases, but what you're seeing here today is part of the project. All right, thanks, Simon. So, how does this all work? This is a schematic floor plan, and we're not going to have blue, yellow, and orange carpet, but we could. I mean, whatever. But what this represents, again, is worship to the right, which is generally north, gathering in the center, which has access to the east and to the west, with an energy vestibule to get inside or outside as you go through the space. And then the blue represents classroom space, as well as kitchen and restroom space. Be aware that everything you see in the yellow is not only gathering, but also corridors to get yourself to either the sanctuary or portions of the sanctuary, and all of the classrooms as well, and into future classrooms should growth occur to the south. Be aware that we have provided opportunities to extend this classroom in the future, or education wing, pardon me. So this can continue to grow to the south. The worship could grow a little further to the north as well, or another addition for a larger space could also occur at the end of that worship space. The gathering space, or narthex, is centrally located, obviously. Once you get into that space, you can get to many parts of the facility, which leads me to the next plan. I got ahead of myself, Alfredo. This is going to be a little hard to see, but what we're doing here is highlighting the narthex itself and the spaces that flank it. Once you get inside the narthex, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see this, Alfredo, but you might just quickly go through it. But we have opportunities to get, or options to get into directly into the classrooms, with the two corridors that come out right next to the restrooms. We have restrooms that come right off of the narthex that basically flank the kitchen to the east and west. And then on the other side of the narthex to the north, we have three main entrances into the sanctuary space, worship space. We also have access to the AV room and storage spaces and coat closet. And there are two restrooms in the sanctuary that we get access to also from the narthex. So the narthex becomes the hub. It's what you don't have today. You absolutely do not have this space today. You have a little bit of area here before people come into the sanctuary, but it's really not a narthex. It orients people. It lets people know what your church building has to offer. It lets people know what your church has to offer. As you walk into this space, it'll be welcoming, and the wayfinding should be very evident. Once you walk in that space, you'll clearly know where education is. You'll clearly know where worship is. And for those of you who like to eat like me, you'll know where the kitchen is. It'll all be there. Notice that if you come in from the east, we have a check-in space directly off of that entry for daycare. And the other entry, again, is to the west. All right, let's go to the next area. That's pretty much the narthex. Now the sanctuary. I mentioned it's a 1,000-seat facility with a raised stage. We're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 feet. I think 4'8" is kind of what we settled on. One main center aisle and two seating groups to the to the west, and two seating groups to the east. And all of those are in a slightly curved arc all focusing generally on this large platform, raised chancel. One of the things the building committee wanted us to look at very carefully is make sure we have enough space to have many different types of events occur up here. Musical, the spoken word, plays, skits, all those kinds of things that need to happen and not have to be taken down every time that you want to have another event up here. So we've got 120 feet approximately of space, averaging about 18 feet in width, wider in the center, of course, narrower on the sides. That provides those kinds of options in that raised area. We have storage. That's the triangular areas on both sides of the seating, so chairs could be stored if you wanted to change the seating arrangement within the space, create a different type of environment for a different type of program. So there's storage on both sides. We have a low slope ramp to the south, or excuse me, pardon me, not south, it's primarily to the east, and that gets you up on the platform without use of stairs. However, there are 2 sets of stairs that get us up to the platform as well. And on the back wall, there is a kind of a privacy corridor. So if someone needs to use the restroom facilities or get out to the sink or the narthex for any reason, they can do that in a fairly private way without making a lot of noise. And so there's 2 restrooms, one to the west and one to the east, in the far east, and those would be family restrooms that could be used by anybody or someone requiring assistance. Notice the seating pattern is wide but not deep, and this was a direct response in trying to get people up close because we have trouble with that. So the idea here is to get people close and be a part of what's happening, and so that seating depth changes a little bit. Neighborhood of 60-some feet back is all the further back the last row of seating is. So this gets folks up close to what's happening. All right, let's go to the education. Education areas all in blue, which, by the way, mine doesn't show. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong. But anyway, there are 2 main circulation aisles or corridors that lead directly to the south, and then they loop in between, kind of forming this H shape on its side in the education area, and that's basically corridor space to get to all these classrooms. And notice we have classrooms along the west, classrooms along the east. These all have windows, and classrooms that also border on the south. These all have windows. We have a couple classrooms in the corners of the H, is that crossbar of the H. Those do not have windows, but we've done, I think, an excellent job in getting as much natural light as we can into those spaces. The classrooms to the east are really toddlers and infants with a check-in area. We've talked about that. Directly above that is the women's restroom, one that becomes more of a public restroom as it faces the narthex, and behind that is another restroom that would be used by females in the education area. Okay. Then moving further to the west, or up on your page or up on the projection, is the kitchen. We have purposely avoided discussing the kitchen in great detail, though we know the space that's required. And we're looking at a commercial kitchen, a commercial dishwasher to provide a truly commercial experience in preparing food and, more importantly, cleaning up and taking care of large groups of people. This needs to be developed a bit further. We're confident we have plenty of space to make that happen. And then as you go a little further to the west or up on the page, that becomes the men's restroom and male restroom on the south side of that is accessed by the education area. And then moving further up on the page, we have some storage and a mechanical room that are necessary, of course. So I think this is a very efficient layout. In particular, one of the things that we were asked to address is being able to expand this very easily. Should the educational program or any other program requiring these classrooms, which are around 400 square feet or so, how can we expand that very easily? Well, these corridors that are yellow would lead further to the south and just connect with more classrooms and make that very easy to do in the future. A very simple addition that would connect with the restroom facilities and connect with the narthex. All right. Finally, you see it all put back together again, and it's important, this sort of three-part arrangement. This is you folks wanting it all, making it work, coming in budget, and so we have this, I think, fairly representative representation of the spaces and the requirements needed for worship to the right, the gathering space, kind of a public forum space in the center, the narthex, and then the education, children experience, could be adult classrooms for that matter, to the left that are all in blue. And see, we've kind of given them equal weight, and that's by design. That's it, I think. That describes it in a very big nutshell. A lot of thought has gone into this from your building committee and some of the user groups that we're able to meet with. We have, though we think we have a very firm direction and a very definitive design, we know that we need to touch base with many of the specific users and confirm what we're presenting here tonight and what we've talked about with some of these users in the past. But that needs to continue on, and should the project move forward, and we sure hope it does, that'll be part of that process. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, my name is Bob Stokes. I'm with Renderneck Associates. I want to start with a bit of a disclaimer and ask that my project management skills not be questioned solely based on my ability to public speak, because this is not my forte. Chuck mentioned that Gordon Parker was not able to be here tonight. Gordon is not only our Executive Vice President, but he's also a valuable member of our team. Gordon oversaw all the initial budgets that have been put together to date, and will be involved moving forward with the project along with myself. And keeping in mind that tonight is more about, our primary focus is more about the design, where it stands now, but where it needs to go next. I'm going to keep the details about the construction phase itself brief. I've also noticed quite a few Packer and Viking shirts in the audience, so I'm sure they'll appreciate that as well. That said, I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have at the end, at the question and answer portion of it. I'll do my best to my ability to answer your questions. What you see now on the screen, and I understand it's quite difficult to read. There's a lot of information in a small space, but we have put together a construction schedule based on our current design and the materials that have been selected to this point. A few items of note, as Dale mentioned, there are still many things to figure out. So we've got a good amount of time, actually 4 months, to complete the construction process. and to work with the individual user groups that are going to be operating within the spaces. Kitchen committee, and different groups, AV, lots of different people to get with, and basically take the general shapes that Alfredo and Dale put together and carved out in the building and actually define what those spaces look like. And while we're doing that, we're keeping the budget in mind and making sure we're staying within that budget. Also on the schedule are considerations for long lead time items. Precast and steel aren't things that are laying around on the shelves of Menards that we can just get our hands on quickly. So that duration itself, just the precast procurement, can be a 15-month process. So we've taken that into consideration at this time as well. I'm not going to run through everything on the schedule, but I will say that the schedule does lend itself very well to a spring start. It gives us time to meet with the individual groups, get the design done and done correctly. And coming out of the chute in spring is ideal. So we think it's a great schedule. Again, I won't go through all the details, but basically our move-in date that we're showing at this point in time, if we hit all of our milestones at this design phase, would be late January, early February of 2018. So, okay. A couple milestones to discuss. What we're anticipating or asking for, I guess, would be a final approval from you as a congregation to move forward on October 9th. So that would give us October through March to essentially meet with the user groups and complete the construction drawings and the permit drawings. So we'll be involved along with Soul and Lang in that process. Current schedule shows us submitting those permit drawings to the city on March 6th. At that time, we will also work on a guaranteed maximum price. And essentially, the guaranteed maximum price will be based off the final drawings. And what we will do is take bids in every category. We will work with your building committee to select potential bidders in all the categories and make sure we're getting good pricing. Again, we're showing a construction completion February 2018. Essentially, the last week and a half of January, we would see things that you're providing, kitchen equipment, furniture, things of that nature going into the facility so that it'd be ready to open that first week of February. Okay. Our involvement as Renderneck Associates during this phase, again, we've put together and established a preliminary budget based on the current conceptual design. That figure I will share with you, I believe at this point, is at $9.1 million. So it's a big investment. During the design phase, we'll be involved and be continually involved with it to help ensure that we stay within the budget during the development of the scope and the programming. Again, I touched on the guaranteed maximum price. Budget controls during construction. We will be doing bi-monthly snapshots of production costs. And during construction, we will have an on-site superintendent that will be there daily to make sure things run smoothly. We'll also be meeting weekly, with the design team, key subcontractors, suppliers, and again your building committee as well. So with that, I believe. Again, get your questions submitted for Dale and Chuck and myself.
So, first of all, I want to thank all of you for the questions that you submitted. We've got a lot of great questions, And as I said earlier, we're going to do our best to address all those, and we'll do that in a variety of different ways. One thing that I would like to say right off the bat, and it came up from a couple of folks, is why we didn't have open mic night tonight and have questions and try to answer them as we went. One reason that we didn't, we're trying to be cognizant of everyone's time. We appreciate everyone coming, but we don't want everybody to be here till 10:30 tonight. And so we promise you that we will address your questions. For those of you that would prefer to ask questions in person, I will volunteer to stand up here after the meeting's over, and I'll stay as long as any of you want to stay and ask questions. So, and I think our representatives from our architects and builders will be glad to answer questions as well. So if you have questions that you want to ask in person, rather than wait for an answer in whatever form we might send those out, please feel free to come up and ask. So there were several questions that were recurring questions that I've got about 6 of them written down that I want to address right off the bat, and then, like I say, the rest of them we'll address as we're able in various means of communication. First question was, is it a flat roof? It is flat in that there's not things on top of it, but it does slope. So it's not a completely flat roof. There is a slight slope to it. It's a little hard to tell maybe from the drawing, so that it doesn't, it's not just a flat roof, okay? There were several questions on whether there would be some form of a canopy on the drive-up part of the driveway. The present plan does not include a canopy, but if somebody wants to write a check, anything's possible. Next thing was, will there be a basement? There will not be a basement, and you might have seen in one of our articles in the Marion Methodist a few weeks ago, we addressed that. It'll be much like a lot of our schools and a lot of the other public buildings that you frequent, in that if there were to be a weather situation, we would have safe places in that building, but it'd be like many of our public schools and other that are built on a single level, so it will not have a basement area. Material, what will it be built out of? It'll be a precast concrete on the outside. It'll have a steel frame or steel rafters and stuff, and then, like I say, precast concrete. Numbers of parking spots. There was a question about, is the number of parking spots enough if we plan to have 1,000 people in there? The number of parking spots that we have are mandated by city code. So we will have the number of parking spots the city says we need to have for the people that we anticipate having in worship. Okay? Will we have chairs or pews? Right now, the current plan is to have chairs. And then there was a question about, will any of the stained glass windows go, and how will those be incorporated into the new facility? Again, we had an article in the Marion Methodist a couple of weeks ago, but the plan right now, there's been, I believe it was 5 different windows that have been identified. And the plan right now is to take those windows. They wouldn't be incorporated into the structure itself in the new facility, but our plan is to have, for lack of a better term, I'll call it a showcase. In the front of the building would be a weatherproof, probably lighted case that would showcase those 4 or 5 windows that we've elected. And those were identified by a committee members in our church that identified the things that are precious to us as a congregation and things that we want to take with us. And so those 4 or 5 windows would be in like I said, a showcase or display case, and would be lighted so that we could take that heritage with us and have it be part of our new facility. So with that, yeah. Right. Yeah. That may or may not happen again, depending on. We put a budget together, and like Dale said, everything that you saw in the plans tonight are in that budget that we gave these fellows to work with, and I think they've done a great job of coming up with a plan that fits not only our needs for today, but our needs for the future. And I hope you saw that, and we had some questions, and we'll be glad to answer those as we go on. But we are looking at this, and we are looking at and building it such that it can be expanded, because we fully, our hope and wish as a building committee is that the day we move in, it'll be too small, because we want to see our congregation and our ministries grow that much. And so we're excited about the plan that you've seen this evening. We think it does a great job of addressing the needs of our congregation, and will address the needs of our congregation going forward. And we sincerely thank you for your support of this project, and we thank you for your attendance this evening and your interest in this project, and we look forward to working with all of you going forward. So again, as I mentioned, I'll be sticking around up here. Dale and Bob will be here, as well as some of the other members of the building committee. But with that, thank you, and travel safely going home. God bless.